Good morning. It's April 16th and we're here at the farm and we're going to do a virtual tour for you today. Oh, this is my co-pilot, Samara. We call her Sammy. And I'm going to flip this around so you can see what I'm looking at. So the sun's just coming over the mountain right now. This is Pisgah Mountain. If a crow flew from here, it would be 10 miles from where we are right now to Carlisle, which is over that mountain to the south of us. So we're to the north, and that's Sherman's Creek, which we can go visit in a little while. And these are all of the blocks that we normally have in cultivation. Some of them have plants in them right now, but a lot of them are just fallow, which means that there's nothing in them. We'll check out these different places on the farm, so the propagation house, the greenhouse, some of the things that are growing underneath those caterpillar tunnels, and the space across the street that we use for growing seeds into plants. So let's go down the stairs. So there's the other house across the street that we use to grow our seedlings in this basement. So this is the room where all of the plants start. So we have a couple under the lights here that we are just growing. They've just germinated. I think in a different tour or lesson we'll talk about what some of these plants are and what we had to do to get them started. This right here is a flat that has not germinated yet, but will very soon. And here's our dog, Poppy. 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 We didn't grow her in here. Over here we have plants in germination chambers, and that's the thing that gets them to start to grow before we can put them out under the lights and then eventually outside. Every plant really starts here, and then after it gets germinated, we take it outside. So let's go to the next place where a plant would normally go. So this is our propagation house. You can see there's a heater at the top because this time of year the plants are kind of fragile and delicate, and so we have to keep the temperature up so that they stay happy. And this is like kind of an in-between place. They start out under some lights and then they need a lot more natural light, and so they come out here before they go outside. So I'm just going to show you some of these plants here, and I'm going to have maybe a quiz for you at the end of this, just so you can see if you learned anything about some of the plants that we have growing here. So this right here, do you know what it is? This is spinach. These right here are spring onions. They start out really tiny like this, and when they pop out, 3 come out, 4 come out, and they come out like really long and spindly. And I'm going to see if I can get close up here. They have their seed pods still on the top. Keep those seed heads on. So right here we have some lettuces. Okay, this is what lettuces look like when they very first came out. These are just germinated. So germination is when a plant gets seeded and then the little first 2 leaves pop out of the top. Here's some tall tomato plants that we're selling as seedlings to people. Now over here we have plants that are a little bit more fragile and delicate, and overnight we keep them covered up and they have heat mats underneath them. So these are going to be tomatoes and peppers that are sensitive. We're going to go outside. I'm going to show you the area that we call our hardening off table. Okay. So after the plants have been inside the propagation house. We call it the prop house. They come out here to this hardening bench, and the purpose is, we call it hardening off. Plants get really fragile when they first start out, and what we want to do is we want to make them be able to deal with sunlight and be able to deal with wind. And when the wind blows these plants around, as long as it's not too strong of a wind, it actually makes the roots stronger, and it makes the plant stronger. So once they get a little bit older, we bring them out here and they can handle some challenges, and that makes them better plants. If we left them in the propagation house all the time, they would actually get pretty weak. So there's a good lesson there. I think that everybody needs some challenges in order to get stronger. So let's look at some of the plants. I especially want to show you these because these are lettuces. I showed you inside the propagation house what lettuces look like when they first germinate. These are lettuces that are getting a little bit older, and within a few weeks we're going to be planting them. We have all kinds of plants on the hardening off table. So we have Swiss chard and kale, and right here is, I can't tell from here if it's parsley or it's cilantro, because they're both in the same family. They look similar. And more, this is broccoli right here. This is what broccoli looks like before it starts to get big and get a floret on it. Okay, let's keep going on our tour. So I'm going to show you next, when we first plant something and put it in the ground, what it looks like. This is what our lettuce mix looks like when we start to plant it in the ground. Now we've put some netting over top of it to keep rabbits mostly from getting in here and eating it, because rabbits love lettuce. We've planted 3 rows. We're not finished with this one. What we do when we're ready to plant is we put up strings so we can see where we want to plant, and then we plant all the plants in the ground and pack them in really tight. So we push our hands around to make sure that they're in there really good and the roots are happy, and then we move on to the next row. So this one has 2 more rows that need to be planted. And on the farm we have these like upper blocks. Each of these blocks are 40 feet. So this one right here, part of it is covered in a tarp. We get it ready by covering it in a tarp so that it can kill the weeds before we plant it in there, or sometimes just keep the rain off until we're ready to plant. That's our cat Iggy. This is block A. This is block B with the lettuce. There's block C over there. There's block D, which has a lot of stuff covered up. I'll show you in a second. And then there's the greenhouse, and then there's lower blocks too. So let's go see what's under those little caterpillar tunnels. So here we are in block upper D. There are 9 blocks here. Sorry, there are 9 beds here, and a lot of them are covered up. And the reason why is because we're protecting something underneath that we just planted. These are broccoli plants. This is what broccoli plants look like when they're first getting started. Now, what's the reason that we put this cover over top of them? It's to keep off a kind of really bad pest called the cabbage looper moth. So I think over the course of this video series, I'm going to show you some good and bad bugs. One really bad bug is what I was just talking about, the cabbage looper moth. And it's just this little white moth with a little black dot on it, and you'll probably see them around if you ever look in your neighborhood. Here's what they look like when they're moths. They lay eggs, turn to caterpillars, and those caterpillars make loops in the plant. So I want to show you the greenhouse, and then maybe we'll take a trip to the creek just so I can show you what it looks like. Here's the greenhouse. Different than the propagation house. We call that the prop house. This one's the greenhouse. The greenhouse is much larger, and the greenhouse isn't for starting plants, the greenhouse is for growing plants. So in here we have some winter holdover plants, and we're starting to plant some other things in here for the spring and summer season. So here's what I've showed you, all the different stages of lettuce. Here's what that lettuce mix looks like when it gets mature. So what we do all season is we cut this back. We cut off the lettuce when it's the right size for the customers that we serve, and people eat that, and then it grows back. So when we plant a lettuce plant in here, it might be in the ground for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And all that time we keep on cutting it, it keeps on growing back. It's kind of a nice plant like that. Over here, this is some spinach. Have you ever eaten spinach before? I actually like it. Some people don't like spinach very much. Popeye likes spinach. And over here, this is cilantro on this end. If you come over to this side, we have Swiss chard. So Swiss chard is a green that has really pretty stems. See those, like all those different colors? And we have what feels like miles of Swiss chard. And at the end there's kale. On the far side there's lavender plants that we're growing that are perennials. Okay, so there's a difference between plants that we grow here. Perennial, the word perennial means that it keeps on coming back, it lives all the time. Versus these other plants that are in here are annuals, and that means that they die back every year. So where we pull them out because they're not supposed to be in the ground all the time. But these lavender plants might be here for years and years. The ones that are on the side there's landscape fabric underneath them and they're popping up through those holes. That is lavender. So we'll use that. We make like jams and things like that, and we'll use lavender to season, flavor some of the jams that we make. Okay, let's keep going to the creek. I wanted to stop real quick on my way to the creek to tell you that this right here is garlic. We planted it last year and it's just starting to come up. So we have 4 rows of garlic. That's what all these things that are covered up are. I'm just gonna pull this back on because it's not supposed to be off. It just keeps blowing off. This protects the garlic. This row cover will protect the garlic from another really bad bug that eats it, which is called allium leaf miner, M-I-N-E-R. So those are they're almost like miners who dig tunnels and holes. So they dig holes through the bottom of the garlic plant and onion plants, and they can make them rot on the inside. Okay, let's keep going. This is Sherman's Creek, and we don't really use it for anything on the farm. People say that you could like pump water up and use that for irrigation, but we have pretty good wells here, so we don't really need that, but it's really pretty, and our dog loves it. So sometimes we go canoeing on this creek. Here's a view of the farm from the creek. So you can see the places that we just were. We were in the Propagation House, we were in the greenhouse. You can't see the house across the street that we were in. But then there's 8 blocks down there that we cultivate. You can see some of them are covered in tarps, some of them have row cover on them, some of them are open. So anyway, like I said, there's going to be a quiz later on some of these things, so hope you paid attention. Okay, we're back where we started from, and I'm going to flip this around so you can see. Sun's just coming up over the ridge, so the one thing that's kind of weird about living here is for you, the sun's probably been up for an hour or more, but because we have this mountain, it gets kind of blocked. And now it's just coming up. It's going to make all these plants really happy. Thanks for taking the tour with us, and I'll see you next time. I'll give you some more challenges then.